Welcome back to the poker vlog. This is episode number 264, and for this one, we're playing 510 at Bellagio, where I get the vlog's first ever royal flush, so I can't wait to share that with you guys. But before we get started, I have a couple of announcements to make. The first one is that we're doing a meetup game September 4th at the Lodge Card Club in Austin, Texas. Me, Andrew, and Doug will be playing a special low stakes 1-2 game. Hopefully you can come out for that if you're in the area. And then that'll kick off our Fall Mayhem series, which runs until September 18th. And I'm gonna be there as long as it takes to get my first ever Lodge tournament cash. So I'll be there probably at least until September 6th, and I might be there for the whole thing. And hopefully that first cash will come sooner rather than later, but I'm gonna be firing a lot of bullets. And then I've been playing on WPT Global quite a bit, and I've been filming the sessions, and I've been creating brand new content that I've been uploading to the second channel, Brado and Clips. I know it's not for everybody, but if you are interested in seeing that, I'll have a link down below in the description box. And if you would like to sign up to WPT Global, use the bonus code VLOG. That'll get you up to a $1,200 deposit match. You can play with me, Rampage, and Andrew on there. And you'll also receive a free ticket to a satellite on WPT Global. And if you win the satellite, you will win a seat to the WPT World Championship at Wynn in Las Vegas in December, which is just the coolest tournament series of the year for a variety of different reasons. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. We're on the Strip in Las Vegas to play at one of the city's premier properties, and I'm in the mood to grind. As fun as it is to play an occasional high-stakes stream, coming out here to battle in the mid-stakes streets with a mix of pros and rec players, not knowing who's going to take a seat at your table, is what I like doing the most. We're here at Bellagio to play 510. I buy in for $1,500. That's the max, you guessed it. I'm excited to play a long session. There are a couple games going, but I initially take my seat at a must-move table that's just about to start. In our first interesting hand, we've got Ace-5 suited on the button. I raised to 30. The big blind calls. He's a vlog watcher who's been to some meetup games before. We're heads up in position. The flop comes Ace-Queen-6 rainbow. We've got top pair, but no kicker. The big blind checks. Although we have top pair, we don't necessarily want to inflate the pot too much. Our kicker's weak, and the hands we're beating aren't likely to call flop, turn, and river. I check for pot control purposes, and also to potentially induce bluffs on the turn from my opponent or instill some doubt in his mind that we've got a top pair or better hand, which will make it easier for me to get called on future streets. The turn is the 10 of diamonds. It's another Broadway card that'll typically be better for my range as the pre-flop aggressor. The big blind checks again. He probably would have bet if he had top pair or better at this point after a check through on the previous street. I bet 40 for value. It should look strange that all of a sudden I'm betting after I checked back the flop. Big blind isn't buying the story that we have it. He raises to 130. It's unlikely that he has what he's representing, which is two pair or better. He may have something like Jack 10 for a combo draw, or maybe he picked up a flush draw. It's worth noting that as his opponent was taking a seat, he said that he came here just to make the vlog, so there's a higher than normal chance that he's attempting a bluff. I call for 90 more, despite not having too many river cards that all like seeing. The dealer puts out the 4 of diamonds, the backdoor flush draw gets there. The opponent doesn't slow down. He makes a small bet of 140. I almost wish that he went with the larger sizing because then it'd feel more like a bluff. With this sizing that he chose, it seems more like he's trying to get called. After I checked back the flop, my hand was slightly under-repped, so I'm not able to get away from it, even though I'm not confident the top pair is good.
Call.
Queen 10?
Queen 10, 140.
I get taken straight to Value Town by the opponent who turned 2 pair with Queen 10 of spades. Now I'm stuck a few hundred. This is a hand that's a little frustrating for me, so I'm going to walk you through one of the tools that I use to study on my own that illustrates where I went wrong. I purchased this cash game product on GTO Wizard. It has every situation solved for multiple bet sizings, and this is one of the absolute best ways to improve your game. Now, I was on the button with Ace-5 of clubs. It folded to me. We see the Ace-5 suited is highlighted in red as a hand that we're always supposed to raise. It's worth noting that when it's folded to you, you're never supposed to open limp. I raised to 30. It's 3 big blinds rather than 2.5 like the suggested amount for GTO, but it's okay if amounts are slightly off. We get to the big blind's defend range. He's actually supposed to be 3-betting Queen 10 suited at a high frequency. He calls though. We go to input the flop data. Once that's in there, we see the big blind is supposed to check his entire range to the pre-flop aggressor. He does that. Next we see what we're supposed to do. We find the square for ace-5 suited. I hover over it so that it expands in the bottom right part of the screen. Ace-5 of clubs is supposed to check back 64.7% of the time. Betting is also reasonable about a third of the time. In the actual hand, I checked back, which is standard. So far, we've nailed it. I input the 10 of diamonds on the turn. First, we see that the big blind is supposed to check about half the time with queen 10 of spades and bet the other half, ideally mixing between different sizes. He elected to check. Now that it's been checked to us twice, we can actually continue to check back the majority of the time with ace-5 of clubs. It recommends checking at a frequency of 78%. Still, we can bet over 20% of the time. I went with the sizing that it prefers most, which is 4 big blinds. This is when things started to get a little wonky. The big blind really won't have queen 10 suited very often on this line. That's why most of the queen 10 suited square is black, and we only see a sliver at the bottom of the square that's colored green for calling and red for raising. The opponent went with a check raise. We get back to what we're supposed to do with ace-5. After hovering over the square and looking in the bottom right, we're supposed to be letting go of ace-5 suited 2/3 of the time and calling 1/3. That's still a relatively high percentage of the time it recommends calling the check raise. I don't feel too bad about choosing to do that. Finally, when the 4 diamonds comes on the river and the backdoor flush draw gets there, queen 10 suited is supposed to pure check. He went with a bet anyway. I click on that option. We faced a bet that was a little less than the option I clicked, but we still see what we're supposed to do once we end up with top pair and a kicker that no longer plays. We should fold ace-5 of clubs 100% of the time to a bet for 60% of the pot. In the actual hand, the opponent only bet 43% of the pot. We don't have that sizing as a preset option, but when we look at what we're supposed to do for facing a smaller sizing of 1/3 pot, we go back to our hand and see that ace-5 of clubs should call the smaller bet about a third of the time. Still, in general, I could have folded on either the turn to the check raise or on the river and saved some money. Again, this is a tool that I use on a near daily basis to improve my game, get a better understanding for what I should be doing in different situations as they come up. I highly recommend checking out the site yourself. It provides baseline solutions for both tournaments and cash games. I have a link in the description box that'll get you 10% off if you use it. It'll help me out as well if you do. Next we pick up ace-4 suited under the gun. We got switched to one of the main games where my buddy Kevin Colenso is now on my direct left. I raised to 30. A few players are away from the table, including my friend, so it's 6-handed at the moment. The hijack, who's second to act, puts in a 3-bet to 90. Ace-4 and ace-5 suited are fun hands to 4-bet with. We've got removal to pocket aces and ace-king hands. Plus, if we get called, we have plenty of playability on low boards where we can make the wheel. High flops are good for us as well because we can make top pair. I re-raised to 290. I'm not going to be pushed around or be intimidated by a 3-bet. Evidently, the hijack won't be pushed around either. He calls for 200 more. Not what I was hoping for, but we've got a solid plan B to fall back on. The dealer puts out Jack 10-7 with 2 clubs. We completely missed that one. Our plan B of drilling the flop is a disaster. All we've got is 1 over and a backdoor straight draw. What's even worse is that it's a flop that smashes the opponent's range. You can definitely have sets of jacks and 10s. You can have some better ace highs like ace king and ace queen. Plus, the ace of clubs is unaccounted for, so the hijack could have a monster combo draw of some sort. I give up and check. I almost want no part in it. I've got 950 total in my stack. The hijack is willing to gamble for that amount. He rips it in. I'm not even beating his semi-bluffs. I fold. I have to add on for a second time today, which puts me in for 2400. I'm down 900 to start without anything too wild happening. Shortly after, we pick up pocket 10s onto the gun. Always nice to look down at a high pocket pair. I raise to 30. The button calls. The big blind calls as well. This is the same opponent who beat me in the first hand we went over when we had ace-5 suited at the must-move table. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes 7-4 deuce rainbow. We didn't flop a set, but at least we have an overpair. The big blind checks. There are a lot of bad turns for us, including overcards to our 10, and cards like 5s and 6s that complete straights and connect with a lot of the small cards that are out there. For that reason, I bet 70. It's on the larger side. I wouldn't mind taking this down now. The button immediately folds. The big blind is being pesky. He check raises to 250. It's the second time he's done that to me today. He really shouldn't have 7 deuce and 4 deuce combinations, so he's mostly representing either a set, top pair, perhaps an overpair like 9s or 8s. We can beat his bluffs and some of the hands that he's raising with for value and protection. I call for 180 more, see what the opponent wants to do on the turn. The dealer puts out the 6 of spades. It's one of those cards that connects with the board that I told you earlier is a bad card for us. A couple of straights get there, including 8-5 and 5-3. The big blind isn't afraid. He fires for 440. I'm very split between calling and folding. He probably would have checked with all of his one-pair hands, meaning that this bet on the turn, he's only representing 2-pair or better. Even if he's bluffing with a hand like Ace-5, which is improved to a double gutter with an overcard, he could still potentially bomb river and put me in a very difficult spot, since I'm not going to have 2-pair or better very often on a low board after I raise pre-flop from under the gun. I'm just not able to get away from 10s at the moment. I call one more time. Maybe we'll get lucky and spike a set. The river is the 5 of spades, putting 4 to the straight on board and completing the backdoor flush draw. The board has gotten worse and worse. The big blind stands up to take a look at my wimpy stack of 770. He jams. There's really nothing I can do. Nearly everything that the opponent might have check raised the flop with as a bluff has improved to 2-pair or a straight. The only hand I could possibly beat is something like Ace-5 suited. I fold. It's another frustrating situation that causes me to lose several hundred more. I have to add on for 700. I'm stuck 1600 and morale is low. Things may be turning around as we pick up Ace-King offsuit in the big blind. Under the gun +1 is trying to start a brawl. He raises to 30. The button says, I see the amount of trouble you're looking for and I'll literally raise you. He 3-bets to 90. Very little has gone our way so far, and by that, I mean nothing has. That's about to change. I put in the cold 4-bet to 350. I'm not in the folding mood, and the two opponents aren't exactly nits, so we'll be getting it in if we get 5-bet jammed on. Under the gun +1 folds. The button realizes that I'm not going to be bluffing very often. He folds as well. We at least see a pot go in the right direction. Perhaps this is a good indicator of things to come. Next we've got Ace-Queen suited in the hijack. The strong hands are finding their way to our seat. I raise to 30. The small blind makes the call, which also makes him my enemy. The big blind is the enemy of my enemy. That doesn't make him my friend though. He 3-bets to 150. Ace-Queen suited is strong enough to withstand a 3-bet. I call for 120 more. The small blind isn't getting too bad of a price. He calls as well. 3 enemies enter the Thunderdome. Only one will leave victorious. The flop comes King-Queen 3 with 2 spades. I have mixed feelings about it. We're in bad shape if we're up against pocket kings, ace-king, or pocket aces, but we're at least beating pocket jacks and pocket 10s that the big blind might have 3-bet pre-flop with. Small blind checks. The big blind bets 300. This is a board that's good for him. Again, it could go either way between calling and folding. The big blind bet into 2 players, making it less likely that he's bluffing, and I still have another opponent that I have to worry about left to act. This all makes me lean towards letting go a middle pair. On the other hand, we could still have the best hand. The small blind probably has a small to medium pocket pair that didn't improve to a set that he'll be folding. He would have 3-bet himself if he had a high pocket pair like kings or queens. He would have 3-bet if he had ace-king or ace-queen as well, and there are only 2 combos of king-queen suited possible, so I don't need to worry much about him. I call 300, mostly looking for a heart on the turn in order to pick up a flush draw. The jack or 10 of hearts could be particularly good. The small blind folds as expected. There's a big pot that's now heads up. The turn is the 3 of diamonds pairing the board. It's a terrible card because I may be drawing slim or dead. The big blind shoves for 1120. I can completely rule out him having a full house because he wouldn't want to scare me off a spade draw by ripping it in. It's very possible that he has something like ace-5 or ace-4 spades that we're beating, or best, he has pocket aces. This jam definitely feels bluffy, but I don't need to take this spot. If I fold, it's another pot that goes the wrong way. We've been seeing a lot of those. I add on for 400 more. I'm in for 3,500 and I'm down 2,000 total. It's hard to feel optimistic, but I'm playing okay. I just need to make some decent hands and I might be able to recover. We're dealt pocket kings in the small blind. This is exactly the kind of help I was looking for. It folds to me. I raise it to 40. A lot of my happiness level is dependent upon whether or not the big blind calls. There's a lot riding on his decision. I'd hate to get a monster and not get any action while I'm stuck piles. He doesn't want to let us down. He calls for 30 more. We're heads up out of position. The flop comes 9-6-5 with 2 hearts. It's a wet board that could have easily connected with the big blind's defend range. I've still got a great hand. I'm going to bet until I get raised. I go for a large sizing of 60. If the opponent has 2 pair or better, I expect him to raise at a high frequency. He calls, indicating that he most likely has 1 pair or a draw. There are a handful of scary turn cards. The dealer puts out the 5 of clubs, which I feel neutral about. There are definitely some trip 5 combinations in my opponent's range, but I'm sticking with the plan to bet. I put in 140 for value. The big blind doesn't need to talk to the manager. He's okay with the price he's getting. He calls. big pot is brewing and there's no reason to believe that we're not best. The river is another 5, giving us a full house the hard way. Missed flush draws won't be able to call a bet, so I could make an argument for checking to induce a bluff, but I'm too concerned that the opponent might check back a hand that could call a bet. I go with a large sizing of 400 to target smaller full houses containing a 9. The big blind clearly doesn't like seeing us wager that much money. He doesn't snap fold though, so he must have at least a full house. I can tell that we've got him beat. Deep down, he knows as well, he just can't get away from it.
You call. Show them.
Our kings are best, we get the victory. The opponent doesn't show, but he'd later tell me that he had pocket 10s. I'm not sure if I fully buy that story since I would have expected the hand to play slightly differently. I have other things to be concerned about though. I'm mostly focused on getting some more money back this session to limit the damage. Even with this win, I'm still down almost a buy-in, which may be too hard to fully recuperate. Just a few minutes later, we've got king 10 suited under the gun. It's the worst king that I'll open from early position. Still, it's good enough to play. I raised to 30. Under the gun +1 needs some revenge. He's the same opponent that we beat in the last hand with kings. He calls. We don't really want to play a big pot out of position against multiple opponents, but we're not off to a good start. Under the gun +2 calls with his big stack. Luckily, the calling stops there. We're going 3 ways to the flop. The dealer puts out king, king, jack with 2 clubs. We flop trips in a multi-way pot. Finally, we're making some big hands. Usually I bet small or check on this board under these conditions. I don't feel like doing that at the moment. I mix it up and bet 60. 60 may not have been enough. Under the gun +1 isn't afraid. He calls. Under the gun +2 also wants to remain in the hand. He calls as well. It's really bizarre to get called in 2 spots on this flop. Maybe one of them has a jack and the other has a big draw of some sort. It's also possible that one of them flopped a boat or has king queen. We need to proceed cautiously. The turn is the 9 of hearts. We pick up the straight draw. Queen 10 gets there, which was the most likely straight draw that we'd be up against, and with 2 opponents having position on us, I check for pot control. We'll gain a lot of information from our opponents by seeing what they do on this street. Under the gun +1 checks. I can rule out him having a straight or better because he would have bet with his strong hands. Under the gun +2 follows suit. He checks as well. Our trip kings is very likely best as long as we're not up against king queen, which is still a possible hand that one of our opponents could have. The river is the 6 of hearts. The backdoor flush draw gets there, but that's not too concerning. I bet 140 to target hands containing a jack that either opponent could have. Under the gun +1 appears to want to call badly. It's tougher for him knowing that there's another player left to act, and me taking him to Value Town with pocket kings is a memory that's fresh in his mind that he probably doesn't want to relive quite so soon. He folds. Under the gun +2 has already had ample time to consider what he wants to do. He's content to wait for a different spot. He also folds. We win another pot in a short amount of time. It's not all that large, and momentum, in theory, shouldn't be real in poker. I definitely feel much better after winning a few hands though. I'm now only down a much more manageable 1100. Here we've got queen 5 of hearts in the big blind. My friend Kevin has straddled the 20 from under the gun. I limp in for 10 more. Kevin isn't going to let us see a flop for a discount. He raises a 60. A suited queen is good enough to stick around with. I call for 40 more. We're heads up, out of position. The flop comes queen 4-3 rainbow. We've got top pair and some decent backdoor draws. I check to the pre-flop aggressor. I expect Kevin to bet almost his whole range on this flop. He down bets to 40. My first inclination is to raise, but that wouldn't accomplish anything. We don't need too much protection since there aren't that many overcards that could come out, and we want to keep Kevin's bluffs in, which he'll have a lot of. I call. There are a lot of good turns for us. The dealer puts out the 8 of diamonds. That one doesn't help and shouldn't have changed anything. I check. Kevin may not be all that strong. He checks back. Our pair of queens is almost for sure the best hand. The river is the king of hearts. I don't like seeing it because we're downgraded to second pair. I check. I'm not sure if Kevin connected with the river. He's at least going to rep top pair or better. He bets 120. This is a less than ideal spot to be in. I'm taking my time. I know that Kevin knows the river is better for him than it is for me, which makes me think that it's more likely that he's bluffing. If he raised pre-flop with a king high hand like king jack or king 10, I would have expected him to double barrel on the turn to get me to fold some weak ace high hands. I start going through my thought process out loud.
Still bet king highs on the turn.
The fact that he checked back the turn makes me think that he had an ace high hand or maybe connected with the 8 and wanted to get to showdown. The only king that I can really picture him having that he played this way is ace king. Kevin is also down a good chunk of money today, making me even more inclined to believe that this is a bluff, and my line was so passive that perhaps Kevin thinks that I'm weaker than I am. Ultimately, I call, we catch my buddy trying to go directly into my pocket and take money out of my wallet. He shows ace-7 offsuit. Obviously, there are no friends at the poker table. We show him that we called him on the lighter side with second pair to win the pot. All of a sudden, we're down less than 4 figures. I've accomplished the goal of limiting the loss, and I've still got some poker left in me. Maybe we can get out of the hole after all. We pick up ace-queen suited in the small blind. We're playing 4-handed at the moment. The game wasn't great, and several players all picked up at once. Some others took a break, so we're waiting on new players to arrive from the must move. Under the gun raises to 30. The button is on the pre-flop raiser's direct left. He makes the call. I'm the next player to act. We've got a strong starting hand, and we don't want to play out of position in a multi-way pot. I 3-bet to 150. A re-raise should allow us to win it without seeing a flop pretty often. Not in this case though. Under the gun calls for 120 more. We'll be going to battle with him. The button folds. We're heads up in a big pot. The flop comes king 10 deuce with 2 spades. We at least have a draw to the nuts. We'll have hands like sets, top 2 pair, aces, and ace king in our range. I down bet to 110 so that we can fold out hands like small and medium pocket pairs that didn't improve to a set. I can't imagine getting raised on this board after we 3-bet pre-flop, so we should at least get to a turn frequently if we don't win it immediately with a low risk bet. Under the gun calls, he could have a king or maybe even a set of 10s that he's slow playing. He could also have a draw of some sort. The turn is the jack of spades giving us Broadway. It's a little bit scary that the third spade is out there. Not all that concerning though, since most of the high spades are accounted for other than the ace. I want to try to get as much money in now as I can because there are plenty of bad river cards that will either kill the action or cause us to lose. I bet 400. The opponent could have a variety of strong hands including flushes, straights, sets, 2 pair, and top. He calls. I'm going to completely bomb river if it's a blank. Instead, it's the 6 of spades putting 4 to the flush on board. It's a nightmare river. I check. Our hand has value and beats everything other than a flush. The opponent isn't sure whether or not he wants to fire. Eventually, he comes to a decision and aggressively checks back. I turn over the straight, still not knowing if it's good. Under the gun isn't happy when he sees it. We never see what the opponent had, but he'd once again tell me that he had pocket 10s, this time for middle set on the flop. With this pot coming towards us, we're only down $400. We've recovered $1,600 from the low point, and we're on a roll. It's our turn for pocket 10s. I'm in the cutoff. Few players have joined us at the table, but we're still not full yet. We're going to be playing this one. I raised to 30. Small blind calls, big blind calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop in position. It comes queen 7-3 with 2 clubs. Not terrible. We've got second pair and a backdoor flush draw. Both opponents check. Most of the time I'll check back. This time I bet 40 to keep control of the pot. I can perhaps check back turn and get to a river cheaply. Plus, if 10s are best, we'll need a little protection against aces, kings, and jacks coming out. Small blind calls. The big blind folds. It's down to heads up. The turn is the ace of spades, which seems bad because it's another over, but it's a much better card for our range as the pre-flop aggressor. Small blind checks. Normally I check at this point, but I'll have so many strong hands in my range that the small blind can't have after he only called the pre-flop raise rather than 3-bet. I can have sets of aces and queens that the opponent won't have. I'll also have ace queen and ace king that he won't have either. I sort of have the perfect hand to check back and try to get to showdown with, but I bet 70, somewhat turning my hand into a bluff. Mostly, I'm betting to keep the pressure on so I can set up a big river bet that the small blind almost certainly won't be able to call, regardless of what he has, unless he has a flush draw that gets there. The small blind calls again. Maybe he's got a draw that we're ahead of, or maybe he has the ace of clubs in his hand, or a queen that he just doesn't want to give up on just yet. The river is the jack of spades, so the flush draw misses. The small blind doesn't care that I've been the aggressor the entire hand up to this point. He leads for 130. What could he possibly have that's that strong? We've got key removal with our 2 10s, particularly the 10 of clubs, blocking king 10 of clubs. This wager of 130 we're facing looks like a blocker bet from a mediocre hand to prevent me from making a much larger bet that the opponent doesn't want to call. On a board that now has 3 Broadway cards out there, where we have removal to the nuts, there just aren't many super strong holdings that the small blind will have, but there are plenty that we could have played this way. I've also got a very good image, only showing down winners against this opponent in multiple hands previously. I want to capitalize on our history, the board run out, and my blockers. I raised to 400, completely turning our hand into a bluff. Hopefully we can get a hand even as strong as ace-9 of clubs to fold. I was hoping for a quick laydown, but we're going to have to sweat this bluff out. The opponent must be stronger than I thought. A minute goes by and the player still doesn't look like he's come any closer to a decision. 2 minutes go by, he's deep in the tank. Finally, after more than 2.5 minutes, we hear from him.
I guess it's no good. All right, good. Good Jack.
I got one through.
Wow, that was pretty sick. Good job.
We get a successful bluff through against Queen Jack offsuit. The opponent rivered 2 pair and showed it as he folded. Even though we saw his cards this time, he would later tell me that he also had pocket 10s. We're about 7 hours into the session when we pick up Jack 10 suited on the button. This hand is particularly fun to play because it can make 4 separate straights that will all be the nuts. I raised to 30. My buddy Kevin took a break to use the restroom, and our mutual friend and poker crusher, Ronnie Barda, took Kevin's seat to hang out and sweat the action for a little bit. The big blind calls, we're heads up in position. Hit the like button on the count of 3 if you want to see some run good. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The flop comes King, Queen, 9, all spades. For the first time in my life, I flop a straight flush. It's the first straight flush of my own that I've ever captured on the vlog. This is awesome. The big blind checks. It's not a flop that'll connect too well with his range, and we can't possibly lose the hand. I check back. The turn is the ace of clubs. It's another card that should be better for us. The big blind checks. He may have complete air. I want to build this pot, but the best way to make money is probably to give the big blind one more opportunity to bluff at it. I check again. The river is as unbelievable as it gets. It's the ace of spades giving us the royal flush. We've got the best hand in poker with the best suit. Some people go their entire lives without hitting a royal flush. Daniel Negreanu famously has never hit one. This is even more insane since this is a 6-card royal flush, which I've never heard of anyone doing ever. I've actually hit a few royal flushes before, but this is the coolest one. The big blind checks. There's almost no way that he has anything too strong, especially since the 6 highest spades are all accounted for. I want to at least make some money and possibly induce a bluff. I bet 10, the absolute minimum. The opponent doesn't seem like he even wants to pay that amount. It'd be a huge shame if he folded. Fortunately, he calls.
Royal flush.
$10 for a royal flush is going to do it. Royal flush?
Yeah. Ronnie Barda.
You know, I've made 10 royal flushes in my life.
That is my 6th one or something.
I made 10. One card and the rest were 2 cards. Flop one.
Jesus.
You know, there's some people who have never made any.
I know.
Despite hitting multiple royal flushes in the past, this one is very special, and we got paid, well, sort of. The big blind would later tell me that he had a king and would have paid up to $20, so I guess we didn't quite make the maximum. It's getting late. I'm down a couple hundred still. I'm not sure if I'm going to get unstuck. All hope isn't lost yet. We pick up pocket kings under the gun +1. This is going to be my last hand no matter what. I raised to 30. 4 opponents call. We're going 5 ways to the flop. I don't like having a premium pocket pair with that many players because it's hard for high pairs to hold up. The flop comes King 8-8 with 2 hearts. We flop a full house 15 minutes after flopping a straight flush that turned into a royal. The small blind and big blind check. I check. Under the gun +2 checks. The player in middle position can't help himself. He bets 40 into multiple players. This is getting good. Folds to me. I'm not going to do anything to scare the opponent away. I call. Under the gun +2 folds. It's down to heads up. We've got the second nuts. The turn is the 7 of hearts, so the flush draw gets there. It'd be amazing if the opponent improved. I checked the middle position player. He doesn't seem to be worried about all the hearts out there or me having a monster. He bets 95. It's a strange amount for this game since most people bet in increments of 10. The last big hand that we played against his opponent, we showed our bluff with pocket 10s. This guy bet into 4 players on the flop, bet again on the turn. He should at least have trips, if not a flush. I raised to 300, expecting to get called by those types of hands. The opponent is actually a cool guy that has handled all the pots that we played together well, even when I showed him a bluff, so a small part of me feels bad that he keeps running into unfortunate circumstances. He makes the correct decision in this instance to fold. I let him know that we flopped a boat. It's not a massive pot, but it's fun for multiple reasons. Not only do we make a strong hand, this one going our way gets us completely unstuck for the session. I thought it might have been too insurmountable of a deficit when we were at the low point. We make a royal flush and a full house at the buzzer to book a win.
Played for 7 hours and 15 minutes. I got sucked 2,000 kind of early on, and it was quite the grind. But I was here with my buddy Kevin. He's been in a handful of vlogs.
We had a blast.
We had a blast. Yeah, but
I love spending time with you, bro. And having musician on you.
yeah, but made a royal flush, got unstuck. I won $100 today. I was kind of just planning on leaving, being stuck a couple hundred. I was pretty happy to get a good chunk of it back, but pretty fun session overall. Quite a few interesting hands, and got to hang out with my buddies. So that's kind of my favorite part about poker. Get to hang out with some friends, have a couple drinks.
And drinks some high noons.
Yes, exactly.
Cheers, bro.
Cheers, dude.
That's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons because it helps out the channel a ton. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to get back to you. This was just an awesome session, not only to get unstuck, but to hit my first ever royal flush on the vlog. Actually, it is my first ever straight flush that I captured on camera. So that was something that was really fun for me, and I hope you guys enjoyed seeing it. And the fact that it was a 6-card royal flush is even more insane. Let's see, we've got the meetup game at the Lodge coming up September 4th to kick off the Fall Mayhem series, and I'll be out there for at least a week to 10 days, if not longer, if I don't cash in something during that time. So it's very possible that I'm out there for like 3 weeks. Hopefully that's not necessarily the case, but if you see me, feel free to come up and say hi. And I'm always happy to talk with you and take photos and everything like that if you're interested. Be sure to check out GTO Wizard. I have a link down below in the description box that'll get you 10% off. I'm constantly using that tool. It'll really help you with your pre-flop fundamentals and post-flop play. It has cash game and tournament solutions, and it's just gonna take your game to the next level if you really use it and study with GTO Wizard. And then finally, use that bonus code VLOG if you want to play with me, Andrew, and Rampage on WPT Global if you're in a country where you can play it. I have that second channel, Brado and Clips, where I'm now regularly uploading my online play, and these guys are just doing absolutely wild things. They're the softest online games that I've ever played. I have more information in the description box below about signing up using that vlog bonus code to get the deposit match and the free satellite ticket to the WPT World Championship. But I'm gonna leave you right now with my favorite hand of the week that I played on Global, and it's about, I don't know, $6,500 pot or something. So hope you enjoy that. Good luck at the tables, and I'll see you next time. Well, we're gonna call here. Hope that this guy jams. Hope that he folds. That's not. Oh, 9 middle set. That's pretty good. And then this guy just piles it. We're not gonna mess around with this one. Okay, amazing turn card. That is fantastic. Massive pot here. Call, bro. We gotta hold. Yes! There we go! Fuck yeah! That was a huge pot. We're up 4 buy-ins on this side. Love seeing that. Both had King 10. Whew.